Hi everyone and welcome back to another episode. We're going to be discussing today content marketing, why there's a lot to do and it's very challenging, however, extremely worth it. So we're going to delve a little bit into content marketing and all the pieces that go with it, the omni-channel presence of it all, and answer probably some frequently asked questions and then go from there. So I will start. My name is Christopher Melotti from Melotti Media and we help brands articulate their value to their customers. Mike?
I'm Mike Sanders from Mobile Marketing. We're a high-performance digital marketing agency.
I'm Kristen Hancock from Fontaine Swatch. We create profound and engaging brands for mid-market Australia.
Fantastic. So I would say that content marketing, it's been at the top of everyone's tongues and everyone's thoughts for 10, 15 years, and it's going this trend and it keeps evolving and it keeps growing. And I still think as marketers, we still hear a lot of questions around this. You know, the challenge of it, the difficulty of it, the effectiveness.
It's bigger and bigger, doesn't it, basically?
And
All music to your ears, right?
Yes, right. But it's just this growing area. So we thought today, we'll just let's nut it out a little bit.
Yeah.
For not too long, but let's.
It's getting bigger, but it's also getting harder. Is what we're finding, because there's just the scale of the amount that you've got to do to prepare for a proper content.
And the channels,
marketing channels.
Like everything, you know, now there's TikTok and there's Pinterest and LinkedIn and websites and Google My Business, and it's I can see where businesses get overwhelmed because.
Can I just nail the channel one first?
Yeah, go for it. Go for it.
So that we don't run off in the.
Yeah, because that's what we do.
The key thing that everybody should remember is do the channels that are right for your business. Don't try to be everywhere and don't try to be everything to everybody.
Yep, agreed.
So identify where your audience is and target those, right? And then create your content around those channels. Do not sit there and say, I have to be present on every single one, because 9 times out of 10, your audience is not present
on a few,
on a few of them. So you can nut a few of them out. So, you know, you might have one they're omnipresent on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
They're really not that demographic that's present on TikTok. So
you don't have
don't waste time on TikTok.
I mean, that's an interesting one, though, in sort of going kind of step beyond that. And I suppose you would see this, Chris, and be interested in terms of how you handle that, because you've got the different channels, but in terms of communication and content, like, do we do different things on all these different channels, or are we supposed to be keeping with one message? Like, how does that work?
It's a tricky one, and that's where the overwhelm comes. And further to Kristen's point is, yes, always focus on the channels that a customer, you know, accustomed to your customers. But I think that even then, it's still overwhelming, because like even if you identify, say, 4 channels, you can think your business is probably going to go, oh my God, there's still 4 channels that we need to focus on. To your point, Mike, for me, I found experimenting really works. So like with my brand, I found that if I keep them fairly consistent across the channels, because I've isolated it to channels that are similar, I find that it works best. I still vary it, like my website looks obviously different to, it's adapted from my website to my socials and all that sort of thing, but they are consistent and there's some sort of like theme there. But I just feel like you've got to try different things. You know, like if you're a big TikTok user or a Twitter user, you know, you're probably going to see that stuff that you do on Facebook won't resonate, and simply because the format's different and the audience expectations are different. But you will find that there's no hard and fast rule, and again, that adds to the topic here of how challenging content marketing is. But I just want to clarify before people get overwhelmed, is that it is worth it. It works.
Oh, absolutely, it's worth it.
100% works. And like, you know, recently, for example, I spent my whole team spent a week writing blogs on content, and we just did this exercise where we did like a whole bunch of content, and we put them all up, and we saw a huge spike in SEO traffic, like almost immediately. Yeah. And I was saying to my team, like, it goes to show that we practice what we preach here. And what I'm saying is it does work. And that's a microscope version of it. But that content that a lot of businesses go, God, it's overwhelming and there's a lot to do, and I always feel like we're always behind the 8 ball, but it works because your customers are there.
So picking up on your point, Mike, about is it the same on all? So what we would always say is that your brand identity is the same.
Yes, agreed.
Your value proposition is the same, but the voice that you use can change between channels. Yep. So the way that you express your identity, the way that you express your voice can actually change. But your value proposition is,
and your purpose, vision, all that, the guidelines of your brand.
Yeah, exactly. So that you must have an overarching identity that you're staying true to, but the way you express it can change per channel.
It's an interesting one too, because we see that in our organisation when we're doing work for clients where if we look at the different channels, different activities that we might do, we often get clients who just want to do some content or know that they've got to write some content, but often they'll write this generic content that you would then blog about or put a blog together about, and then potentially do it on social media and
Yeah,
stuff.
pull pieces.
Yeah, but then they often, where they really struggle is that they'll write that content just for, like they'll write it for the blog and then think, oh, well, that's the same, that I can just use that same bit of content in the same context, the same way on all these different channels. Yeah. And the reality is you can't. Yeah. The way it's communicated needs to change quite substantially, even if it's the same thing.
Yeah.
You need to communicate it in a completely different way.
Or to set expectations. Because that's what it is. Like when they think about, like, and we shouldn't have to tell anyone listening or watching anything, is that when you go to LinkedIn, you're in a different mindset to when you Google, you know, and to when you browse a website or a landing page, or you look at, you know, if you're scrolling through YouTube Reels, like all of that kind of stuff, your mind is different. So, like, your brand is probably in those few places. But, like, to your point, Mark, is you have to make sure that in context it works still.
Yeah, so look, one of the things that I think a lot of time we discuss with clients and they talk about doing content for campaigns, etc., is the perception that, okay, I've come up with a great campaign idea, let's just roll it out. And the real challenge is the heavy lift that you have to do to create the campaigns. And you do need, look, at the end of the day, you need help to do it.
Yeah,
because
it's a lot.
Campaigns and content creation works really well when you've got a fantastic brand identity, you've got great brand guidelines, you've got a clear visual voice, you've got a photographic image library, you've potentially got videos that you can grab from, you've got all your messaging done. Now when you have all of that sitting in play and ready to go, actually building campaigns and creating different content for different channels, it really does become quite easy. And you can, and to me, if you do the heavy lift up front and you plan out, you know, because what do we often work on? 6 or 12 months, generally.
Yeah,
if you plan out 6 or
months.
12 months, you can get all of that content ready and you can be really efficient in the way that you either do it in-house or you procure it.
Yep. And it stops the
doing-
knee-jerk thing,
Yeah,
right? Because
yeah,
you get to Monday and you go, oh my God, what do I need to
What
put
am I
some...
gonna post? And then you end up just putting something out there that's completely and utterly irrelevant, or just doesn't resonate, or it's weak.
Yeah.
You know, and there's nothing worse, because then you're stepping off what, you know, the piece that we get fundamentally concerned about. You're stepping off your brand identity and you're constantly changing your voice, so you're losing that trust factor. So we encourage clients to go through the pain, do it like you do a budgeting cycle, but do it as a content cycle, and then create the assets that you need. So when you pull it together, for people like yourself, Mike, it's really easy because you've got all the assets there, you're ready to go.
Well, I think that's a big one that we see, where people kind of going back to just writing content for the sake of the content. But we know that in terms of communication, the content itself is actually still only a small portion of the overall communication.
Yeah,
how you communicate it is as important, if not more important, than what you communicate. Yeah. And if you think about it, you know, like an example, for instance, in terms of, you know, let's say giving feedback to someone. You know, how you give feedback to someone can be completely different. It's the same feedback in terms of if someone does something wrong, you can be supportive and nurturing and say, hey, next time maybe you can do this a bit differently.
Yelling and screaming.
You know, or you can yell and scream and give very negative and coarse feedback to someone to try and enact change. Now, sometimes certain situations might call for different types of approaches to how you give feedback, and they're completely appropriate. But to say that it's just one piece of content or one way of doing feedback, and then that should be applied in the same way all the time to everyone, is completely missing the point of the context and how you go about communication. So if you want people to actually take on board that communication, the content itself and what it's actually trying to say, you've got to think about how you go about saying it, and that's as important as the content itself.
Yeah, so I mean, like for the listeners out there, I think, so where would we start? We would actually start working early and creating, you know, with likes yourself, create a content plan. It's not something you can do ad hoc. You've got to create a content plan because you've got to map out what the content plan is going to be for each channel and what it is
Customer
that you want
type,
to say, and
topics,
why you
subjects.
actually want to say it. What is it you're trying to get across, and are you leading to a call to action, or are you just doing a brand awareness campaign? Because they're very different from our perspective. It's a very different look, very different feel between what you're trying to do, and you're making sure that there's awareness in the market, if you're doing a campaign, that something's change to make it look like a campaign and not just like we're constantly reinforcing the brand.
Yep.
Okay, and start there, and then once you've planned it, then you can work out, if you planned it well, you know what assets you need.
Yeah, and that's what I do with
that
a lot of my clients, is we do a 6 or 12 month plan, and we talk about customer types and things, and then we build subjects on top of that, and then therefore they've literally got 6 to 12 months of stuff locked in, and then there's also room for flexibility. Like as things change, you can move things around, but it's not as much of a turbulent experience as it can be when you're going, oh my gosh, it's Mother's Day today and we have no content for mothers, and it happens, all the time. And therefore your brand, then you realize, oh my God, my brand's so irrelevant because I'm always so, wishy-washy with the content that I'm creating. And that's when people go, oh, this is too hard, or it doesn't work.
Absolutely.
Whereas when you're strategic, you've got the brand elements and the design and all the messaging and a great plan, all of those kind of good things, suddenly content becomes easier. And that's why reaching out to marketing agencies can help, because a lot of the times you're just thinking, look, like, I outsource my finance because that's not what I do, and that's what it is. That's what it comes down to, is do you really want to be focusing on trying to be there and trying to constantly be there, or just giving it to a professional, letting them take direction, they take the execution.
Exactly.
And then it's moving, and you're hitting and then suddenly your customers are coming to you and your leads are coming in, and you go, oh my gosh, where are these coming from? And it's all that content that's out there working for you.
It's like anything you do
evergreen.
in business. If you prepare and you plan and execute a good plan, then you'll get the results. One of the things that we also look at is when you actually do plan it well, what you can do is you can reinforce messaging a lot, because sometimes people think that every bit of content has to be new. No, that's not the case. Sometimes you actually need to tell people over and over again before they'll get what your true USP and your value proposition and why should I buy this service or product. So by planning it out, you can say the same thing in a different way, or looking at it and going, oh well, actually every 3 months we actually just need to tell them again. Because we need to touch them again. So I think that reaffirmation and presence is key. And as you said, Chris, it is not as simple as it was. It's getting harder to do just through the scale and the different nuances of the channels, and then the amount that you need, Mike, to have an impact. I think you do well now, really do rely on your consultants, because that's what they're there for.
If you're not out there, your competitors are. That's when it comes down to it, right? Like if you think it's all too hard, I'm not going to do it, then your competitors, I can tell you, are there. They're the ones getting that attention.
Don't be naive enough to think that the competitors are doing it all themselves, because they're not.
No.
Even the largest corporates are not outsourcing this stuff. So yeah, absolutely. That's it for me.
Me too.
I agree.
I think we've covered it. I think I hope that was a nice, quick thing. Look, as we've agreed, content marketing is difficult, and there's a lot to do. But it is worth it, and it is especially worth it when you plan it out correctly and you take the time to really take a proper approach to it. And I think that's the point of this episode. So, thank you, everyone. I was going to say, thank you everyone for joining us. We're at Cub, the Cub office, which is the Club of United Businesses at Potts Point in Sydney, and we're members and love it. So that's where we're recording at the moment.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us.